In this video, I will show you how I modeled a wolf in Blender. I would say this is an intermediate tutorial, so I will assume you know the basics of Blender. Nonetheless, I'll try to cover as many details as possible to help you understand the process. The first thing to do is to find good references. At the very least, we will need two images, one for the front view and another for the side view. It might be hard to find good references for 3D modeling. Luckily for you, I already made that work, so go ahead and download the images, link is on the description. Start by opening Blender and delete every object in the scene as we won't need them. To do that, press A to select everything, then X to delete. So let's go to the front view by pressing numpad 1. Press Shift A, select Image, Reference. Go to the folder where you saved the images and select the front reference. Press and hold the mouse wheel. Then, as you move it leftwards, press and hold Alt. That will eventually lock the right view. Now, it's time to import the side reference image. Select the side reference in the viewport. Press G to grab it and then X to move it along the X-axis. Move it until it is behind the front reference. Select the front reference, press G to grab it, then Y to move it along the Y-axis. Now let's scale the images so the wolf size matches the size of a real wolf. We will use a cube to help us. So press Shift A, select Mesh, Cube. Change the viewport shading to wireframe on the top right. Press N to show the panel on the right. Then change the cube dimensions to match that of a wolf. 1.4 by 0.9 meters is probably not far from reality, but feel free to use any other dimensions if you want to. It also depends on the species of wolf you're creating. Select both reference images. To do that, press and hold Shift, then left-click on each one. Go to the right view. Press S to scale the images down until the wolf is the size of the cube. Now delete the cube. To do it, press X, then delete. Center the images by using the menu on the right. Change the axis accordingly. I put the front image at 0 x-axis and the side image at 0 y-axis. This ensures that the images will stand at the origin point on those axes. Now it's time to start modeling our wolf. Go to the right view, then change the viewport shading back to solid on the top right. Create another cube. Press S to scale it down, and then place it over the wolf's body. Let's start editing the cube. Press Tab to go into edit mode. Turn on Face Select, then select the face on the right side of the cube. Press E to extrude the face to the right until it overlaps the leg. Left-click when you're done. Turn on Vertex Select. This will allow us to select the vertices of the mesh instead of the faces. If needed, turn on Wireframe by either pressing Z, then Wireframe, or through the top menu as we did before. While on Edit mode, if you press A, you will select everything on your mesh. Pressing A twice will deselect everything. So make sure to deselect everything, then press B. That will allow us to create a selection rectangle. Use it to select the vertices you need to move, then press G to grab and move them. Now to continue extruding, we should turn on Face Select again. It will probably help if we're working in solid mode, so press Z to change the viewport shading back to solid mode. Select the face on the left side. Once again, on the right view, press E to extrude to the left. Press G to grab the face and move it up to follow the wolf shape. At this point, just keep moving the vertices accordingly. Change the viewport shading between wireframe and solid mode when needed. Now we need to subdivide the faces of the neck using a loop cut. To do that, move the cursor over the edge of the face you want to subdivide, then press Ctrl R. This will create an edge loop, splitting the faces. You'll be able to move the mouse to change the position of the edge. When you're done, left-click to confirm it. Again, select the vertices and move them, respecting the wolf shape. Let's create some more loops in the back of the wolf. A useful thing to know is that when creating a loop, after pressing Ctrl R, you can scroll the mouse wheel to create several loops. Scroll up for more loops, scroll down for less loops. Create another loop in the leg, then keep selecting the vertices and moving them. If needed, when moving a vertex, after pressing G, press the key of an axis to move the vertex in that axis only. For example, press G, then Y, to move the vertex in the Y-axis only. Go to the front view by pressing numpad 1. Create a loop, right in the middle of the mesh, by pressing Ctrl R. At this point, I realized I needed to adjust the reference image so that it would be exactly in the center of the mesh, so I pressed Tab to get out of edit mode, selected the reference image, pressed G, then X to move it a little in the X-axis. Now back to the editing, select the mesh again, press Tab to enter edit mode. Turn on wireframe if it's not already. Then use Beat to select all the vertices on the left side of the mesh, make sure you don't miss one. Now delete them by pressing X and then choose faces. Press Tab to exit edit mode. Then, in the panel on the right, select Modifier Properties. Add Modifier. Mirror. This modifier will mirror half of the model so that when we are editing half of it, the other half will remain symmetrical. Even though I haven't done so, I suggest you check the clipping box in the Mirror Modifier Properties. That will ensure that the vertices in the center of the mesh will stay in place. Go to the front view by pressing numpad 1. Enter wireframe mode and start editing the right half of the mesh so it starts to match the wolf shape behind. Go back to solid mode and go to the right view by pressing numpad 3. Now we want to create a horizontal loop through the mesh, so press Ctrl R. Turn on the X-ray on the top menu. This will turn the mesh transparent without the need to change the viewport shading to wireframe. Again, adjust the vertices, both in the side and front views. Turn off the X-ray. Turn on Face Select, then select the faces over the wolf's leg. Press I to create an inset, then drag the mouse to scale it down a little bit. Left-click to confirm it. Now, for the sake of learning, let's use a different way of moving things. On the panel on the left, select the Move tool. Place the mouse over the X arrow of the gizmo and drag it out. If by any chance you can't find the panel, press T and it will appear. Turn on Vertex Select and continue to use the gizmo to rearrange the vertices. Again, turn on Face Select and select the faces of the arm. Same way we did with the leg, press I to create an inset, then drag the mouse to scale it down. After this, turn on Vertex Select again, and then select and move the vertices to follow the wolf's arm. Don't forget to use Ctrl Z every time you make a mistake. Keep on editing the mesh to be as close as possible to the shape of the wolf in the reference images. If needed, turn on X-ray to see the wolf's image behind the mesh. At this point, I decided to change the opacity of the reference images so that you can see better the keys I press. So let's keep going with the vertices. Now it's time to create the arms and legs. Turn on Face Select. Select the bottom face of the arm. Press E, then move the mouse to extrude the face. Don't forget to left-click to confirm it. Press S and then Z to scale in the Z-axis only. Then press 0 and hit Enter to confirm it. This will make the bottom face completely horizontal, as all the vertices will be in the same position on the Z-axis. Turn on Vertex Select and edit the vertices. Press R to rotate. Left-click to confirm it. Repeat the extrude process for the rest of the arm. Press Ctrl-R to create new loops in the middle of the arm. After that, select the vertices and move them to match the shape of the wolf in the reference image. Make sure you don't forget to do it in the front and side views. Create more loops in the arm if needed. Always remember, when modeling something, try to keep the topology of the mesh as clean as possible. This means to let the edges loop around the mesh in a natural way. That becomes clearer after the mesh is subdivided. Also, keep in mind that you want your mesh to have mostly quads, so that when you animate it, it'll deform well. It's okay to have some trees though, but don't overdo it. As for the ingons, there's no reason that I know of that would justify having even a single ingon in any of your meshes. Quick tip, if you select a vertex and then press G twice, you can move it along one of the connected edges. Repeat the process for the leg. Extrude. Edit the vertices and create loops if needed. To select an entire loop, turn on Edge Select, press and hold Alt, then select one of the edges of the loop. You can also scale something in a single axis. To do that, press S to scale, then the key of the axis you want. Keep editing until everything seems to be in place. We will now work on the wolf's rear part. To make it easier to see what we are doing, let's hide the front reference image. So press Tab to exit edit mode, select the image, then press H to hide it. Select the wolf mesh, press Tab to enter edit mode again and start editing the back of the wolf. Sometimes we may need to work on the entire mesh, instead of just half of it. For example, we will need to create an inset for the tail, and that's something we'll do much better if we're working on the entire mesh, so let's apply the mirror modifier. Exit the edit mode by pressing Tab, select the modifier properties, then select the drop-down arrow under the mirror modifier properties, and then select Apply. Enter edit mode again, select the rear faces, then press I to create an inset, move the mouse to scale it down. Edit the vertices so that the faces have a circular shape. Then start extruding. Recap, E to extrude, left click to finish. Keep doing it until you feel like it's a nice looking tail. It's important to understand that the tail of the wolf is much thinner than it actually looks like because of the fur. If you don't want to add hair particles to your mesh to simulate the fur, you should create a thicker tail, and use a good texture to simulate the fur later on. But since I intend to add hair particles to this model in an upcoming video, I will create a thinner tail. Another tip, sometimes we need to delete edges or vertices without further damaging the mesh. To do this, select the edge, vertex, or even a loop. Press X, then select Dissolve Edges or Vertices, depending on your needs. You can also do this with faces, though I find that option much less useful. If needed, you can turn on proportional editing in the top menu. This will allow you to move not only your selection but also its surroundings. You can then scroll the mouse wheel to increase or decrease the area that will be affected. So now that we're done with the tail, press Tab to exit edit mode and press Alt H to unhide all the objects that were hidden. This will unhide the front reference image. Get back to the wolf mesh, enter edit mode, and now we're going to edit the head, starting with the neck. Again, keep in mind that the neck of a wolf is thinner than it looks like because of the fur. Using Extrude when needed, keep on editing the mesh. Don't forget to use G to grab, S to scale and R to rotate when you need it. After pressing one of these keys, you can also press X, Y or Z to move, scale or rotate in a single axis. Press G twice to move a vertex along an edge. Now let's create the jaw. Start by selecting the bottom front faces, then press E to extrude. Move the mouse leftwards, and then click to complete the extrusion. Adjust the position of the jaw. Do the same with the upper part. Adjust the head, create more loops if needed. So now, before we continue editing the head, we will repeat the process of adding a mirror modifier. This is because it will be much easier and faster to model only one side of the head, while the other side will automatically change with perfect symmetry. So enter wireframe mode by pressing Z or through the top menu. Press numpad 7 to go to the top view. Press B and draw a selection around half of the mesh. Make sure you don't unintentionally select anything else. If you make a mistake, just press A twice to deselect everything, and then try again. Press X to delete, then select faces. Press Tab to get out of edit mode, change the viewport shading back to solid. Go to the modifier properties, add modifier, mirror. Editing the head of the wolf might not be easy, but let's get into it. Get back to edit mode, then change the viewport shading to wireframe once again. If you go to the front view, you might notice that there are too many edges in the mesh, which might turn it difficult for us to edit the head, since we can hardly see what is going on. Fortunately, we have a good solution for that. Go to the side view, select the body of the mesh, but not the head. Then press H to hide it. This will hide the entire body, except the head. Now we can see more clearly, which will allow us to edit the head and the snout much easier. So start editing, and don't forget to do it both in the right and front views. Whenever you want to unhide everything again, press Alt-H. While editing the mesh, feel free to go back to any part of the body if you feel it needs an improvement. Now it's time to start subdividing the mesh. Make sure you're on object mode, select the modifier properties on the right panel. Add a modifier, and then choose subdivision surface. This will subdivide the mesh and smoothen it out. We want to apply this modifier, so make sure the levels in the viewport are set to 1, select the drop-down arrow and hit apply. The mesh is now subdivided and can be edited, since we applied the subdivision surface modifier. That said, press Tab to enter edit mode, and with the help of proportional editing, start editing the mesh so it matches the reference images. Don't forget to scroll up or down to change the proportional editing area when needed. Feel free to hide any part of the mesh if needed. That way, you'll be able to see better. Whenever we're editing a mesh that has the mirror modifier, it's usually a good idea to check the clipping box on the mirror modifier properties. Otherwise, we have to make sure that the middle vertices remain at the 0x axis, that is, the origin. Don't forget that while modeling anything based on reality, you must keep looking at references to have a better understanding of what you're trying to model. So for the ears, make sure to check out some images of wolves' ears to see what they look like. So let's try to create some good-looking ears. It should be fairly easy. Just extrude some planes and drag them up. Keep using the references to guide you while editing the ears. Control-Alt to create loops when needed. To create the ear hole, create an inset in the front faces of the ear. Extrude the faces. This time push the faces inwards to go inside the ear. Now just keep on editing. Now, let's create the paws. For the paws of the wolf, we must also look at references to understand what they look like. No need to exaggerate the level of detail, at least in this model I will try to keep things simple. We want the front part of the paws to have 4 toes, so we need to add 2 more edges. To do that, we will join some vertices through an edge. So select 2 vertices and then press J. Repeat the process for the other side. When it comes to the toes, wolves have 5 toes in the front paws and 4 on the back paws. So let's start extruding them. We have to extrude the toes separately, otherwise we would be extruding the entire paw. Go ahead and edit the toes and the paw until it looks good. Now we need to create the dew claw, which is pretty much the 5th toe. For that, we can select the faces around the area where the dew claw is supposed to be, and then press E to extrude. Drag the selection outwards, rotate it about 90 degrees. Then keep editing until it looks good enough. Remember to always try to get a topology as clean as possible. Cleaning the mesh to get a good topology is important. As an example, I realized that I could merge some vertices in the bottom of the toes. I selected the vertices that I wanted to merge. Pressed M, then chose it last, so that the merged vertex would be positioned in the place where the last selected vertex was. The wolves have pads in their paws. Digital pads in their toes, a metacarpal pad and a carpal pad. We will simulate those in the bottom of the paw. Again, it doesn't need to be very detailed. Select the faces on the bottom of the foot and then extrude them. Do the same for the faces on the bottom of the toes to create the digital pads. We can then use the Snap tool on the top menu. The Snap tool is particularly useful when we need to align objects, vertices, edges, or faces to one another. So turn on the Snap tool, and before proceed, don't forget to make sure the snap is set to vertex with closest. To do that, open the panel through the drop-down arrow that's located on the right side of the Snap tool. Then drag the selected faces down and place the mouse over any vertex that is located where you want to align the faces. That should do the trick. Don't forget to turn off the Snap tool when you don't need it anymore. The Transform Pivot Point is another useful tool. Basically, it allows you to change the location of your pivot point and consequently the way your selection will react when you edit it. In this case, for example, I wanted to scale the digital pads of the wolf independently, so in the Transform Pivot Point menu, I chose Individual Origins. The forelimb is looking good, but it is still missing the carpal pad. Select the face where the carpal pad is located and extrude it, then edit it a little further by moving the vertices and edges around. We will now create the claws to finish the forelimbs. Select the faces of the tip of the toes and create an inset, then move the vertices so they take on an oval shape. Don't forget to press G twice when you need the vertices to move along the edges. Some more editing to better the topology. Another important tip: if you want to subdivide some faces, but don't want to create entire loops, just select the edges that are supposed to be subdivided, then right-click, Subdivide. To connect two vertices through an edge, select both vertices, then press J. Extrude the claws, then keep on editing them until they actually look like claws. Finally, we finished the forelimb. Now we move on to the hind limb. It will be much easier to create the back paw, and the reason for that is simple. We already have the front one, so all we need to do is to copy it, move it to the back limb, and then change it a little bit. So, in wireframe mode, press B to select the paw. You must only select the paw and the 4 main toes, leave out the dew claw and the carpal pad, since the back limb of a wolf doesn't have those. Press Shift D to duplicate the selection. Move the duplicate in the Y-axis until it is close to the back leg. Change the viewport shading back to solid mode. Select and delete the faces in the end of the leg. Now we want to select only the paw. That's pretty easy to do, since the paw is disconnected from the rest of the body. Just place the cursor over it and press L. Drag it until it is in place. Now we need to scale the leg so it matches the size of the paw. Select the vertices and start merging them. Press M, select its center. This means the 2 vertices will be merged in the position between them. It's time to get back to the snout. Once the general shape of the snout matches the reference behind it, we can start adding some details. We will start with the eyes. Select the faces of the eye, then extrude them inwards. Select the edges around the eye. Right-click, Subdivide. Merge some vertices so there are no trees in the corners. Now let's edit the wolf's mouth. First we will need to apply the mirror modifier. Select the faces of the mouth, then create an inset. Select the upper faces and extrude them inwards. Do the same for the bottom faces. Repeat the process with the faces of the throat. Select them and extrude inwards. Use the grab, scale, and rotate tools to edit the mouth. Remember to look at references to see a wolf's mouth from different angles. Now we will add a mirror modifier once again. So like we did before, select half of the model and delete it. Go back to object mode by pressing Tab. Select Modifier Properties, add Modifier, Mirror. Now we can edit the mouth much easier, without having to worry about the other half of the mesh. We need to create a bevel. In Edit mode, make sure you have Edge Select active, then press Shift-Alt and select the edges of the mouth. To create a bevel, press Ctrl-B, and then move the mouse to change the bevel width. Now we want to create the gums, where the teeth will be inserted. For that, we'll need to create another inset, which we'll be able to do better if the mirror modifier is applied. That said, let's apply the mirror modifier once again. Select the interior of the mouth, from top to bottom. Then press I to create an inset. We can add a mirror modifier again, so while in wireframe, select half of the body and delete it. Add the mirror modifier. Keep on editing. When everything seems in place, select the gums faces and extrude them. Repeat the process for the upper gums. Now let's focus on the nose. Again, don't forget to find good references to help you out. Start by selecting the faces and create an inset. Because we're using a mirror modifier, this will create an inset in each half of the nose, but we want the edges to be connected. So subdivide the edges in the center of the nose. This will create a vertex in the middle of each edge. Move each of these vertices along the edge by pressing G twice. Finally, join the vertices with the ones created by the inset. To join the vertices, select both of them, then press J. Delete the edges you don't need. Select them. Press X. Dissolve edges. Editing the nose may be a little tricky, but if you have come this far, you will probably understand what I will do next, without the need for an explanation every step of the way. So in short, inset, subdivide, join vertices, and dissolve unwanted edges and vertices. While doing this, always try to get a topology as clean as possible, try to avoid tris, unless it's absolutely necessary, and make sure there are no ungons. For the sake of this tutorial, you must model the nose, the same way I did. This way you will get a nose with only quads, but remember that there are endless ways to model everything and still get great results. To create the nostrils, select the faces where they are supposed to be located and extrude them inwards. Keep editing the nose until it looks good enough. Create a bevel in the border of the nostrils. Now because there was a forgotten angon in the side of the nostril, we will correct it. To add more details to the mesh, we need to subdivide it once again, so add another subdivision surface modifier. Make sure the viewport levels are set to 1, then apply the modifier. With the mesh subdivided, we can edit it a little further. So let's start by correcting the parts of the mesh that look weird. To help us edit the eye socket, we can create a simple UV sphere to simulate the eye. So press Shift-A. Mesh. UV sphere. Scale it down and place it inside the eye socket. With the sphere in place, we can edit the eye socket. The topology above the eye socket looks a little weird, so we need to fix it. So now it's time to prepare the gums to receive the teeth, but because it's hard to do it before having the teeth in place, we should model the teeth, put them in place, and then work from there. I thought it made sense to cover the modeling of a couple of teeth and no more. Because the principle is always the same, and some teeth are just duplicates with some changes. We will use a cube to model the first tooth, so go to the object mode if you're not there yet. Press Shift-A, Mesh, Cube. Scale the cube down and place it in the wolf's mouth. Another cool tip, we want to scale the cube in all axes, except in the Z one. To do that, press S to scale, press and hold Shift and then press Z. Move the mouse to scale the cube down, then click to accept the changes. Press Tab to enter edit mode. The first tooth we're creating is the canine, so rotate it to match the tooth in the reference image behind. Add a subdivision surface modifier. In the top menu, you have the Transformation Orientation tool. Currently, it is set to global, but when working with the teeth, you might need to change it to local sometimes, because that will allow you to move the teeth according to their own orientation. Make sure the subdivision modifier has the viewport levels set to 1 and then apply it. Press Tab to enter edit mode and start editing the tooth. Having the tooth in place, you can now correct the mouth. Use the proportional editing when needed. Now we'll create the incisors. Different tooth, same process. Create a cube and then scale it down. Enter edit mode, start editing. If you zoom in too close to a face and the face disappears, that means you probably need to change the viewport clipping. Select View, and then reduce the clip start value. Again, add and apply a subdivision surface modifier. Keep on editing the mesh. Keep adding the teeth, same process every time. Add the canines, incisors, premolars, and molars. When finished, you should have something like this. So now we want to edit the lips and the way they join the gums. Canids have those black lips that merge with their gums. Make sure to use references to help you out while editing the wolf's mouth. To create the upper teeth, just duplicate the bottom ones, put them in place and edit them. Edit the upper gums and teeth, the same way we did with the bottom ones. The top teeth should be placed outwards in relation to the bottom ones. That way, when the wolf closes its mouth, the teeth will fit better and don't overlap. Though this is important, we will still be able to change the teeth position later on. So for now, it's good enough. There are still many things we can do to optimize our mesh and make the wolf look better. For now, let's improve the ear. You can use a subdivision surface modifier just to see how the model looks like when it is further subdivided. Just don't apply the modifier as we will eventually delete it. Feel free to improve any part of the mesh at any time. Now it's time to create the tongue. Start by creating a cube. Scale it down. Then place it inside the wolf's mouth. Scale the cube in the x-axis. Enter edit mode and start editing the cube so it starts to take the shape of a tongue. Once again, don't forget to take a look at images of wolves' tongues to understand what they look like. Make sure the tongue fits inside the mouth. We can rig it later so that it stretches and eventually comes out, as canids often do. But for now, we want to keep it simple. Sometimes we may need to center the origin with the geometry. To do that, make sure you're in object mode, right-click, set origin to geometry. Create some loops around the tongue and continue editing. Looking good, time to add a subdivision surface modifier to see how the mesh works when subdivided. Apply the subdivision surface modifier. Create a bevel. To do that, press Ctrl B, and then move the mouse to change the bevel width. Scroll up to create more edges in the bevel. Now we want to continue editing the tongue, but because we cannot see it clearly since it is inside the wolf's mouth, we will duplicate it. However, instead of duplicating the instance, we will duplicate only the object while keeping the same instance. This means that the changes we make to the duplicated object will affect the other one because it has the same instance. To duplicate the object while keeping the instance, press Alt-D. Then move the duplicated object away from the wolf's mesh so we can edit it. Feel free to add a subdivision surface modifier just to see how the mesh looks when it's further subdivided. Now that the editing is complete, we can delete the duplicated object, because the changes also affected the original one. I didn't edit both sides of the tongue equally, so one of the sides needs to be mirrored. At this point, you already know what to do. Select half of the mesh. Delete it. Then add a mirror modifier. Edit the tongue a little further if you feel there's something that's not quite there yet. Apply the mirror modifier. There are still some things to improve, so use this time to improve the mesh and add some details. Model the mesh so that its shape is more accurate to the shape of a real wolf. It's time to model the eyes. We're not going to create anatomically accurate eyes, but we will try to simulate them. Select the sphere that was previously created and grab it out of the eye socket so we can work on it better. Go into Edit mode, Face Select. Then select the faces in the front of the eye. Duplicate the selection by pressing Shift-D. Now we want to separate the selection from the rest of the mesh, so press P to separate, and then choose Selection. This new created mesh will be the cornea, and it will be transparent. We won't need it for now, so press H to hide it. Select the eye, and in Edit mode, turn on Edge Select. Press Shift-Alt. Then select 3 loops. Now delete the selected loops by dissolving the edges. Turn on Face Select and select the faces from the small circle in the front. Those faces will be the eye pupil. Make sure you are in local orientation, then move the selection inwards. Press Ctrl R and then scroll up once to create 2 loops around the pupil. Don't forget to click twice to confirm it. Select the smaller edge loop and drag it out. Make sure it's positioned a little bit outside of the pupil. Select the other edge loop and drag it out, but not as much as the smaller one. Press Tab to get out of Edit mode. Then press Alt-H to unhide the cornea. Select both meshes of the eye. Then drag them to the eye socket. Select the cornea first, press and hold Shift, and then select the rest of the eye. Press Ctrl-P, and choose Object Keep Transform. This will make the last selected object the parent of the first selected object. This means that the cornea is the child and the rest of the eye is the parent. So every time you move, scale or rotate the eye, the cornea will follow. So now select the eye and place it in the eye socket. Just for the record, the pupil seemed too small, so I scaled it up a little bit. At this point, I edited the eye socket so the eye would fit better. One important thing to do is to apply the scale on your meshes. This will save you from having problems later on while editing them. As you can see, in the panel on the right, the scale values will all change back to 1 after applying the scale. The eye is finally complete, so it's time to duplicate and move it to the other side. Select the entire eye, with the cornea included. Press Alt-D to duplicate the eye while keeping the same instance, and then press Escape, so it stays in the same position. Make sure the cursor is on the origin point. You can do that by looking at the right panel, and see if the cursor location is 0 for the X, Y, and Z axis. If it is not, type 0 in all axes. Then change the transform pivot point to 3D cursor. Now go to the top menu, Object, Mirror, X Global. That will mirror the eye and place it in the opposite eye socket. Now we need to do the same for the teeth, but first we need to join them in a single mesh. So select all of the bottom teeth, and then press Ctrl J to join them. Now press Shift D to duplicate them. Press Escape to leave them in the same position. Go to the top menu, Object, Mirror, X Global. And we have all of the bottom teeth in place. Select all of them and press Ctrl J to join them. Repeat the process for the upper teeth. The model is about finished, at least for the modeling part. However, we can still see the faceted look of the mesh, so we need to smooth it out. Select the mesh, right-click, and then choose Shade Smooth. Do the same for the eyes, teeth, and tongue. Apply the mirror modifier on the main mesh. We won't apply any more subdivision surface modifiers, so either leave it or delete it. There are still details that could be added to the model, but these details should be added through sculpting. We may cover this in a future video. So if you like the video and learn something from it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel for more tutorials. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me what you think. Also, feel free to take a look at my other channel where I post some VR 360 videos, 3D animations, Photoshop manipulations, and more stuff. Thank you for watching.